Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. You're listening to our D&D game, and I'm your host, the Dungeon Master, or DM for short. And where I live, it has been about 3 degrees all week long. Very, very cold, way colder than it usually gets in my area. Um, so cold that the local schools did not have the ability to heat the school. Because they don't normally have to deal with that level of cold. It's normally this time of year about 30 degrees, not 3. So that said, I think there was only one day of school this week. And my son, I mentioned before in earlier podcasts, my son is a teacher and it's my daughter's senior year of high school. So they were home this week and we got to play some Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm gonna basically tell you what we did. The prologue is that as the PCs, well, I should say before I get into it, this is part 4, the Barrier Peaks. If you haven't seen the first 3 parts, check those out, or this might not make sense to you. So that said, the prologue to this one was that when the PCs were searching the area where the skeleton of the captain's wife is, it reanimates. And so the PCs destroy the skeleton, but it is a reminder that Atropos the Endbringer will be here soon. For those who are unfamiliar, I mentioned in earlier games, as he nears a planet, the dead start to rise from the grave. Okay, then we get into the plot. After finishing their search of the captain's quarters, they head west and encounter 3 phase spiders, which they kill. Then they enter Area 22A, which is full of Vegapigmies. They dealt with them the exact same way as they did in the last adventure, having Bart go first and use his death ray on them. They do the same thing in Area 22B, 22C, 22D, and 22E. This is a really long and tedious process. I discussed that in the last adventure as well. And by the end of it, the PCs had it down to an exact science. It wasn't fun to play, but they were really, really good at dealing with these Vegapygmies and getting the mold out of all the crew quarters, which that mold, by the way, we've never really been able to deal with it before. And that's why we would get partially into this dungeon, but never get very far. At any rate, after they dealt with all the Vegapygmies, they were in Area 21, which was a hallway with shrieker mushrooms that were like an alarm system that the Vegapygmies used. Um, Again, Bart with that ray of his, which, I mean, you're going to see this repeated over and over again. They really kind of over rely on Bart for the ray. And there's an interesting moment where that kind of, well, I don't want to ruin it. We'll get there. At any rate, for now, he uses the ray in Area 21 to get all the fungus out of the hallway. From there, they went to Area 23, which was an art room. There was nothing of consequence in there. Area 23A, though, that room was a sculpture studio where they encountered a gray ooze that had gotten on top of a clay sculpture of a head that was like 3 feet tall. And basically, this gray ooze was like pulling the same stunt that a mimic does, where it pretends to be something else. So it was pretending to be sculpting clay. At any rate, they get rid of it, you know. Spoiler, that's pretty much what they do with almost everything in the dungeon except for one thing, but we'll get there too. So Area 17 was a room full of radiation that the female android warned them about. In Area 20, Bart's anti-magic ray made short work of a couple of will-o-wisps. In Area 17, they encountered 3 more phase spiders and they got rid of those. And the PCs have now cleared level 1. And we had gotten this far in earlier dungeons, more or less, but like I said, we always had this mold around that would risk turning people into Vegapygmies, so nobody ever wanted to screw with it. Nobody ever thought they had the ability to clean the ship, right? So before, everybody always backed off, and we have never ever ran level 2 of this dungeon. So this was the first time I've ever run it where the PCs go down to level 2. And as soon as they get there, they are attacked by that intellect devourer and they kill it. They remember the letter they found earlier that mentioned this thing was loose on the ship. And they actually kind of expected it to be more like the boss of level 2 or something like that. So they were surprised that they encountered it so soon and were able to get rid of it as easily as they did. In area 2 of level 2, they find the captain's body, which is a skeleton, as well as a gray card that he owned. Eliza, the Air Maiden, finds that while searching the area. And they mentioned in the module that it is the exact same color as the floor is here. So it's very hard to see that card. But she finds it and she gives it to Arthur because Arthur, wants to own this ship. Since he's from Earth and the ship is from Earth, it's going to be his ship. So she gives him the card, and it's the only gray card anybody has. So they feel like that's fitting. At any rate, in Area 3, the PCs find a small vehicle that can carry 2,000 pounds of weight. So the green-skinned siblings walk instead of trying to ride because they're so big and heavy, but everybody else rides this vehicle. Arthur drives it. Again, he's from Earth, so he understands, like, what is a steering wheel and stuff like that. So he's able to work this thing pretty well. They drive to Area 4, where Arthur finds a repair robot. And since he has that gray card I mentioned, the robot obeys him. He orders it to go up to level 1 to the very center room there, the computer room, and to report into Gamish for instructions. If you remember the previous episodes, Gamish was this tinker gnome that Arthur knew, and the goal is to get the ship working, and they're one step closer to that now. In Area 5 are basically components of a power plant. Again, in a way, this is kind of a trap for this dungeon where medieval characters don't know what a power plant looks like. They don't recognize certain pieces of technology that would have a ton of electric current running through it. But since Arthur is with them, it's not much of a trap. He basically just says to leave them alone. There's also some radiation on this deck too. They avoid that. And the PCs move on to level 3. In Area 1 of level 3 is a cargo hold where a trapper drops off the ceiling and lands on Bart trying to eat him, but the PCs kill it. Again, they encountered one of these at the beginning of level 1. It's sort of like those fish that hang out on the bottom of the ocean and they disguise themselves as the sea floor, That's what this thing does, but it disguises itself as the ceiling, and then it drops on you when you walk underneath it. And it goes for Bart because he's the biggest meal, since he's a beholder. At any rate, Area 2 was an elevator-like mechanism. Nothing important happened there. Area 3 was a lounge with tables, chairs, amusement devices, so on and so forth. Area 4 was for entertainment in the evening, and it's comprised of several separate areas. So there's a cocktail lounge, a bar, a nightclub. There's an area for dancing, like a dance floor. And there's no longer any power to this area. There are several bottles in a carton in the far corner of the bar. The PCs leave it alone. Area 5 is the kitchen, and that's just like the kitchen was on level 1. Area 6 of level 3 is a balcony. When the PCs walk over to the edge, they can look down into level 4. And by the way, that's why I chose the art I did this week. I feel like this would be the hardest thing to visualize. This reminds me of a mall that I used to go to when I was a kid. where it was a 2-story mall. And when you were on that upper level, there would be balconies where you could look down at the people on the lower floor, doing their thing. This is kind of like that. And so the higher level is level 3, and everything up here is sort of like metal, nightclub, dance club, bars, things like that, right? But down in level 4, it's like a park. So it's a lot of plants and there's, water, so on and so forth. This is what GURPS would refer to as a habitat module. And I played a bunch of different role-playing games, but I've kind of adopted that phrase over the years to describe when a spaceship has kind of like a park area in it. At any rate, as they are looking down at at level 4 from up on level 3 where they're at, they are attacked by ropers. The ropers disguise themselves, blending in with their surroundings, and then they snare the PCs with tendrils. For once, this is what I started to mention earlier. For once, Bart can't use Death Ray because he is grappled and he is flailing around in the tendrils of his opponent, and he can't get a clear shot without risking friendly fire. So this battle is one of the toughest the PCs have faced so far, because again, they've been kind of overly reliant on Bart's Death Ray, right? So they rise to the occasion, and in the end, the PCs manage to kill these ropers without any of the PCs dying. In Area 7, they encounter strangle vines, and that basically goes the same as the last encounter did. And as before, the PCs win. In Area 8, it's vampire thorn vines, which are the toughest plants yet, and again, the PCs win. In Area 9, they meet a dining servo robot. This thing, honestly, it reminded us of Bender from Futurama. It's kind of like cylindrical. It's wearing like what is basically a tuxedo, built just for the robot. And it is, when this place was operational, it would serve food and drinks. Well, now it's malfunctioning. And so it wants to force feed the PCs this food that has gone moldy with this blue-green colored fungus that causes insanity. So everybody attacks the robot, they destroy it. Bart uses Death Ray on the fungus. By the way, the PCs are starting to get along at this point. Bart has established himself as a valued member of the team. And when he was attacked by ropers, the team saved him. So the group dynamic right now is very friendly. Like when everybody met Bart, they hated him. Now he's one of us, that kind of thing. In Area 10, Bart uses Death Ray on a group of web birds before they can pierce the PCs and lay eggs in them that would eventually hatch, kind of chest burster style, right? Areas 11 and 11A contain stasis cages. The first one is empty. Whatever was in it wandered off. But the second one contains winged snakes, and Arthur hates snakes. So he has to make a saving throw to see if this is going to be a fight or flight type of situation. He actually rolls a critical success, so it's fight, right? So he managed to kill one of them because we said he did double damage. So he kills one of them in a single blow. His teammates take out the other two, and Bart uses Disintegrate on the remains because he can tell Arthur doesn't like these things. He's not going to want them on his ship, even if they're dead. He's squeamish around them, so Bart takes care of it, which is nice. Again, Bart is doing things for other people without needing anything in return. That's very different than how Bart started back in the Temple of Elemental Evil. At any rate, Area 12 are more robots that obey Arthur because he's got that gray card. He sends them to Gamish to help get the ship up and running again. Area 13 is more radiation. In Area 14, Bart kills a green slime. Area 15 has those things. I don't know what they're called. Like they have them at Niagara Falls, and it's kind of like they're like binoculars on a pole, and you can like put a quarter in it, and they will work for a minute or something, and it lets you get a really close look at the falls or whatever. I think I've also seen them on top of the Empire State Building, where you can look around New York City, and you get the idea. At any rate, Area 15 has those things, and you can look down into Area 4 from here. Speaking of which, PCs head down to level 4, and in um, Area 1 of level 4, they encounter some leechoids, and they kill them. In Area 2 of level 4, Bart kills boring grass tendrils. In Area 3, they kill lizardoids. In Area 4, the player characters encounter a 6-legged honey badger-like animal called an Aurumvorax. At least I assume that's how it is pronounced, Aurumvorax. But yeah, it's like a honey badger. It has kind of a golden colored coat. It's got 6 legs. It's got some really nasty claws. At any rate, Eliza, the air maiden, casts healing on it and starts to feed it, and she's beginning the process of trying to tame this thing. So I tell her to, roll a d20 and tell me what she gets. She rolled a 19, a natural 19, without adding any charisma modifiers or anything like that to it. So for now, it does not hate her, we'll put it that way. But it's still a wild animal, so that's like we have where I live, we have a lot of wild cats that are just feral cats that roam the countryside. So I kind of compared it to that in a way. And in real life, my wife has tamed those down and turned them into house cats and stuff. And so she's trying it with this Aurumvorax, but we'll see how that goes. At any rate, the PCs encounter deadly plants in Area 5, and then in Area 6, they encounter an Umber Hulk. They kill the plants, and then they kill the Umber Hulk, and when they search the area, Eliza finds a jeweled ring that is worth a fortune. But when she reaches for it, some rot grubs burrow through her arm and hand. She actually takes so much damage that she respawns. And Bart uses Death Ray on the rot grubs and her old body. After the rot grubs are all killed, she loots her own body and gets her equipment, her inventory back. Bart trolls her about dying so much. And she says that she's died more since she met him than she ever did before she met him. And what starts as witty banter kind of escalates. And like I said, everybody had been getting along really well, and then this happened. And they just keep amping it up. And then Bart is trying to use persuasion to convince her to be a harlot who works for him. And he starts to say something to we've got the one dark elf who's half dragon. And he's talking to this guy about, how much gold would you pay me for a night with Eliza? Eliza's very offended by this. She is a cleric, after all. And so they just keep fighting more and more. Eventually, Eliza feels like some of the words that she was saying out of anger sort of like put a barrier between her and her god. That bad behavior. Now she's supposed to be lawful good, and she's got to kind of walk that tightrope. You know what I mean? So the party ends up deciding to take a long rest, and that whole time she just prays and asks for forgiveness for her anger and crude language and all that stuff. So everybody else gets their hit points back, but she does not. At any rate, after that, I thought that was an interesting exchange and worth mentioning. After that, the party goes to Area 7, where they kill some baboonoids. And in Area 9, they kill a black pudding. In Area 8 and Area 10, though, they find water. And in the water are these amazing fish that glow in the dark. They are beautiful, and they put on like a light show, basically. And the party does things like cast detect evil, so on and so forth, trying to figure out what's the deal with these fish, because the fish aren't attacking them, right? And so what they figure out is the fish are poisonous. But if you leave them alone, the fish are just beautiful, right? Um, and since they are rainbow colored, Eliza interprets this as a sign from her God, reminding her basically that he loves her. Like here, here's a can't think of the word right now. You get the idea though. It's a sign, she thinks. Um, in area 11, the PCs encounter a shambling mound and kill it. In area 12, it's a green slime, they kill it. Area 13 was this weird gorilla pig creature called a squealer, they kill it. Area 14, Bart kills a bunch of lizards. Area 15 and 16 are the previously mentioned strangle vines and vampire vine thorn roots. Um, Area 17, they encounter a wolf in sheep's clothing. And the interesting part of this was Arthur has encountered one of these before. And as soon as he sees a cute little bunny rabbit sitting on a tree stump, he stops and he asks, do we have like a rock, or do we have something that is useless to us now? And so Eliza hands him an ammo clip from a blaster that is spent. It has no charges left in it. So he throws it at the bunny hard, right? But the bunny doesn't run away. It doesn't act like a bunny would normally act. It just stays here on this stump. So Arthur says he thinks this might be a wolf in sheep's clothing, which he compares to an anglerfish. And so he's explaining it to the others who nobody, by the way, in or out of game, nobody had ever heard of one of these. But he says that the bunny is kind of like the light that the fish uses to lure in prey. And he says the tree stump part of it would basically be like the rest of the fish, right? So Bart just decides to hit the whole area with Death Ray, attacking the monster. And it turns out Arthur was right. It rises up out of the soil screaming. It's not dead. It took damage, but I think it only lost like a fourth of its hit points or something. At any rate, it's whipping its tentacles around, it's acting angry. When I was describing it, I tried to get the players to think of like John Carpenter's The Thing, the old 80s movie, with like tentacles whipping around and stuff. And um, it was really effective. They were really, really scared of it, and it was a very good encounter. And then finally, after that, in Area 18, they encounter the Froghemoth. And so that is basically this thing that has three eyes on top of its head. It looks like a huge frog with tentacles. It attacks the PCs, and this is by far the hardest battle they've had in this dungeon yet, right? So um this is the end of the level basically. So this is the dungeon boss. They kill it, and then afterwards they agree they need to rest and get their hit points back. So then we get on to the epilogue of this adventure. In Area 19, the player characters encounter something called gas bats. Each one looks like a bloated bat. They float slowly overhead, and then once in a while, one of them farts, rocketing it through the air, right? And by the way, this is in the module. I didn't make this up. This is not like my sense of humor or anything. I was almost surprised this was in the module. At any rate, Bart shoots them with his death ray, and they start falling out of the air, hitting the ground. And every time they impact, it's knocking the gas out. It's making fart noises. So I guess after the Froghemoth fight, this kind of hit right. The players really liked this part. And then also here, the PCs encounter the Robo Bar. And this is basically like a high-tech gazebo with a bar inside of it full of high-tech controls. And it seems like it doesn't work anymore and all the power's turned off. And so this is where everybody rests. and Eliza pushes buttons when all of a sudden the lights come on, and overhead where the gas bats were, a hologram appears, and it seems to show a section of the universe where this ship had previously been. And Arthur guesses that it must be some kind of a navigational tool or something. And he says, you know, Gamish and the repair robots must finally be getting the ship back online. And areas that were dark are becoming now fully lit and things like that, you know. So everybody is happy that it means basically the plan is working and they think they're going to be able to get off the planet soon. So they, since they're in a bar, right, they pop open a bottle and celebrate. And meanwhile, what they don't know is Atropus the Endbringer, which is again basically D&D's Galactus or Unicron, right, arrives in orbit over this planet, which is called Orth, and it builds up speed, and he's getting ready to do his impression of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. So the story is progressing. The clock is ticking, you know. Things are, in my opinion, things are getting interesting. So we had a really good time playing this one. I hope that you had a good time listening. If so, we'd love it if you took a minute to hit the like button. If you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, all that jazz. And we'll see you next time. Bye.